Count your blessings, ladies and gentlemen, because this is Brian Pillman Jr., and you're listening to the most influential podcast. You're listening to the Pro Wrestling Proverbs.
So when you think of the ultimate pro wrestler, like if you had to take attributes and create just the best one, you probably want someone, that can be a singles and a tag guy. He can work a technical style. He could fight with the big boys. He could do high flying moves. He could be hardcore if needed. Pretty charismatic. Work with men and women. Pretty good on the mic. I would say his character would have to evolve over time. When you think of people like that, you think of what? You think your Mick Foley's, maybe your Stone Cold, your Shawn Michaels. Undertaker even has a little high flying there. So, but would you be surprised if I lumped Matt Hardy into this?
A little bit, yeah. Because Matt Hardy's not, that's when you think of like overall great pro wrestler is. And I think that's kind of the topic of our conversation here today, is you don't necessarily think of Matt Hardy, essentially. You think more of his brother Jeff, and that's kind of a symptom of Matt, how Jeff always overshadows him. But
I think the big thing is when you look at the three TLC teams, only one of them has one star, and that to me is the Dudleys. I don't think Devon really ever broke out. He had the charisma, but that was about it. I watched a couple of his TNA matches recently, and his finishes was like a neck breaker and a flying forearm. So nothing great. But then Edge and Christian and the Hardys kind of fall into the same boat, where there's one guy on the team that gets all the accolades. He's looked at as a top guy, first ballot Hall of Famer. In this instance, it's Edge and Jeff Hardy. Well, then Matt Hardy and Christian have always kind of been overlooked. They've been a workhorse. They've won multiple titles. They haven't had to just stick to that team. I think the difference in the two teams, though, is Edge is clearly the top guy out of Edge and Christian. No matter how well Christian can do, no matter what he does, his TNA title reign, his Impact title reign, his stuff in AEW, Edge clearly overshadows him, and he should.
Yeah.
Like, Edge is, if you want to compare it, Christian would be like an A- or an A, and Edge would be an A+. Like, it would be hard for someone to pass Edge. But I think the Hardys, I don't think Jeff always has been better than Matt. I think maybe that 2008-ish time when they really pushed Jeff is the only time that you can be like, yeah, he was clearly better. I think Jeff is looked at more as a high flyer, and he does special moves, the crazy jumps, and as I'll get into this a little later, he's kind of the downfall in quite a bit of their pushes. But like you said, the big thing here is discussing Matt and how in wrestling he's had a terrible twist of fate of never really reaching that pinnacle.
He's always gotten super close, right?
Yeah. Yep.
But something always happens.
He always sputters out. Like he never crosses the finish line. I guess to really start it, I'm not gonna go all the way back to the Omega days. I'm gonna go to when the Hardy Boys were really getting their own in the WWF. I shouldn't have to go through all that history, but they had the ladder matches, they had the TLC matches, being regarded as some of the best WrestleMania matches of all time, some of the best tag team matches on all time. And this was like the mid-card stuff. That's how stacked the roster was. And the Hardys, even, a lot of people forget, feuded with the Power Trip, which was Stone Cold and Triple H, who were the top two heels at the time. Hardys had the WCW tag titles after the Alliance invaded. I mean, they were at the top of the card, and then Lita giving them that extra push. It didn't seem like there was anything that these guys couldn't do until it went into singles competition. Jeff had a mediocre at best light heavyweight title run. He had a cool moment where he beat Triple H for the Intercontinental title. Matt Hardy won the Hardcore title. I think there's a European title in there too. But then they had their first split. And I say first because I think they've probably had the most splits of a tag team. I can't think of any others where they've gotten back together and split up this many times. I mean, granted, the Brothers of Destruction had feud for like 30 years.
Yeah.
But they only got back together maybe twice. And whenever the team split up, they didn't usually split up and feud. They'd kind of just go their separate ways, or someone would get hurt. Usually the Brothers of Destruction would have to get together to fight, a formidable team like the Power Trip, or Mark Henry and Big Daddy V, or that one funny time of MVP and Mr. Kennedy. Or when it was like Chavo and Edge. But still, they'd have to get together.
Or DX in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. I mean, the Hardys, though, this first split, the fans didn't want it. This is that point in the 2000s where Vince was kind of splitting up all the teams, kind of see how they work. I get it. You want to see if someone can have a singles run. I don't think this was it at the time. The Hardys were still relatively young. They still had a lot of years. They could have had a lot of tag team feuds. It wasn't great. Lita was the guest referee because the whole story was, whose side is she on? Jeff Hardy won the match, but then the following night on Raw, Matt Hardy beat Jeff and Lita in a handicap match. So, I mean, the pay-per-view match really didn't matter. Then it seemed shortly after this that the Hardys, they of course, they're brothers, they're back together again. And then the one thing I'll remember when I first started watching Weekly, Eric Bischoff was the Raw GM, and the Hardy Boys wanted a title shot. And he said, okay, you can have an Intercontinental title shot. And they were excited, and then one of them was like, oh, but who's going to get it? So then Bischoff flipped a coin, and he goes, looks like it's Jeff. Walked away. Of course, Matt Hardy got pissed. He costed Jeff the title shot. And next thing you know, on SmackDown is Matt Hardy version 1.
The best version of Matt Hardy, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, in WWE for sure.
Yeah.
And, I mean, just to give an idea, even before the Cruiserweight stuff, he was fighting, Taker. He was doing programs with Brock Lesnar. I'd kind of compare him to the Sami Zayn of that era. Okay. Like, he was goofy, and he wasn't supposed to be at that level. Fans took to him. I mean, the Matt Facts were hilarious. He got Shannon Moore, who would become his moron. Or no, Shannon Moore would be his MFer, and Crash Holly would be Shannon Moore's moron. It was after this that he had some success. Matt Hardy tried to lose some weight to get under 215 pounds, which was the weight limit for the Cruiserweight title at the time. And he'd weigh in, and he just barely made weight, but then he beat Billy Kidman for the Cruiserweight title. This bugged me as a kid that Matt was the one of the Cruiserweight division, because again, Jeff Hardy's the one that does the flips and all the high flying and all the crazy. Matt's big top rope move was a leg drop. But he held his own with the Cruiserweight title. I think having someone not do the same shit over and over and over helped the championship stay relevant at this time. I feuded with a debuting Mysterio. As I said, he had his matches with Kidman. That's when the Cruiserweight Championship scene was stacked. Tajiri, Jamie Noble, Hurricane, Chavo. And it was a loaded division. This is when SmackDown was at its peak. He seemingly almost quietly dropped the Cruiserweight title. And that was about it. The rest of his time on SmackDown was nothing. It was like a fart in the wind. I mean, it's just like when the Hardys broke up the first time. You had all this momentum, and then it stalls out. And you would think this would be one of the few times, but I swear, any time he would get any momentum, it would just stop. I don't know if they gave up on him. I don't know if Vince didn't want to make him a passion project. But Matt never really got... He could get the ball rolling, just nobody would truly give him the support. He showed up on Raw to tease proposing to Lita. Because unfortunately throughout his whole career, Lita would be a pretty mainstay. He then had a pretty good feud with Kane. I don't know if you remember, it was the Till Death Do Us Part match. Matt lost to Kane, of course, because why put the people together that are actually in a relationship when you can have Lita and Kane be in one? After losing to Kane, he had to take about a year off. He got a knee injury. So again, little engine that could. He's getting up the hill and then stalls out. Hardy, after this year, was released. And it was largely due to some unprofessional conduct. I don't know if you remember this one. After he discovered that Lita was having a real-life affair with Edge, who, it's been stated many times, outside of Jeff Hardy, was Matt Hardy's best friend.
Yeah. And it wasn't... This was at the time... Matt Hardy was home with an injury.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And so they're traveling together. Matt has no idea this is going on. He's rehabbing an injury. And Lita and Edge are traveling the road together.
And Matt discovered it.
Stabbing Matt in the back.
Yep, he discovered it. I'm pretty sure it was with Lita's cell phone. But of course, you know, as all things go, this caused the fans to cheer for Matt. And he got brought back. Which, I mean, it worked. He was brought back to the WWE after a little bit on the indies. Vince McMahon did the whole, brought him back in. Hardy's going to face Edge. This was after, Hardy came through the crowd. One of the first times I remember being confused if this was real or if this was, the fake WWE. This feud, it's interesting as I researched this stuff. I thought that I felt that it went on forever. Hardy returned. It was announced August 1st, and October 3rd, he lost a Loser Leaves Raw match to Edge. So I mean, you're looking at only 2 months, but it just, in my mind, it felt like it went on for a year, year and a half.
You gotta think, this is 2005. We're in fifth grade at the time. Yeah, that kind of stuff feels like it lasts forever. Because, during that period of time, us watching wrestling, everything just made such an impression on us.
Right.
It was everything was wrestling. I don't remember much about it happening live, because it was on. All this happened on Raw.
Yep.
And during that time, I was not allowed to stay up late enough to watch Raw. I only watched SmackDown as a kid, and so I never really got to see much of this happening live, unfortunately. But do you remember? I do remember seeing the Bite This phone call that happened.
Yep.
Because I used to go on WWE.com all the time, or YouTube and whatever. Oh, no, YouTube wasn't a thing yet. WWE.com. And seeing that Bite This like segment happen, like obviously, you know, I thought wrestling was real still.
Yeah.
But now, even now, looking back on it, it kind of blurs the lines a little bit.
Yep. Then after, you know, he lost the Loser Leaves Raw match, because I guess you gotta write him off for Raw if he's not gonna fight Edge. Shows up to SmackDown. Kind of just floats again. You know, probably the hottest feud in the WWE. Realest feud. One of the first times that wrestling got real again in a minute. And it just stalls out. Once it's done, they don't do anything else with him. Like, you'd think they would have at least given him like an Intercontinental title. Something.
You'd think.
But he goes to SmackDown. Feuds with Eminem. I remember he had a bunch of random partners facing Eminem. Like, the one was Tatanka. One was Road Warrior Animal before he turned heel and became the Road Warrior. And he got hurt again. He returned to action, and he had a little bit of a feud with Gregory Helms. It looked like maybe he was going to get a Cruiserweight title opportunity. But then, lo and behold, the Hardy Boys returned. You know, one of the more popular teams in WWE history. Where do you think they returned at?
You know, it has to be on the flagship show Monday Night Raw, right?
ECW on Sci-Fi. The first time that they've teamed together in 5 years. Again, one of the more popular tag teams. Like I said, Dudley's, Edge, and Christian Hardy's. When you think of WWE tag teams, gotta be 3 of the top 5. It re-debuted on ECW on Sci-Fi.
When was this? 06?
Yeah.
Well, they're still trying to make, you know, ECW.
This was right before December to Dismember.
Oh.
Yeah, a cool moment that happened at December to Dismember. They had an open challenge, and Eminem answered it. Hardy's won. Then that infinite ladder match happened.
Oh, with what's his name?
Yep.
Mercury, his face.
Yep.
Okay, all right.
The Hardys kind of floated again. JBL got pissed off at Matt Hardy at WrestleMania 23 because he told Jeff to jump. I don't know if you remember that. Jeff Hardy was at the top. He could have easily grabbed the briefcase. But Matt's like, hey, jump off that and hit Edge for me, buddy. The next night, they won the World Tag Titles in the second gauntlet. It was John Cena and Michaels, or it was a Battle Royal. John Cena and Shawn Michaels defended the titles won, and then they had to re-defend it against more teams. I mean, it was cool to see the Hardys back with tag titles, but nothing interesting really happened. I mean, Lance Cade and Trevor Murdoch, and then the reformed World's Greatest Tag Team was their main opponents. After this, I mean, they kind of just Hardys aren't together anymore. Matt Hardy, still on SmackDown, started a feud with MVP, which I think was one of the better mid-card feuds at the time. This is when they had contest where MVP claimed he was better than Hardy at everything. They did an arm wrestling contest, a basketball game. They did a chess match. They did a boxing match at Saturday night's main event. However, because MVP's heart condition, Hardy had to face Evander Holyfield. Then, MVP and Matt Hardy ended up being tag partners and winning the tag team championships from Deuce and Domino.
Wow. Deuce and Domino.
Yeah. Cliff Compton and Jimmy Snuka Jr. is who was Deuce and Domino.
They had who's the girl? They had a girl too, didn't they? Cherry something.
Cherry, yep.
The dumb shit you remember.
Then finally, they dropped the titles to Miz and Morrison. And then Hardy tried going after the U.S. title from MVP. Actually won the championship after WrestleMania. So Matt Hardy got hurt. MVP was in the Money in the Bank. Matt Hardy ran in and essentially cost MVP. He won the U.S. title. You had a great feud like that. Tag title win. U.S. title. He declared himself a fighting champion. And he defended the title against the who's who of the mid-card at the time. Kennedy, Benjamin, Elijah Burke, Chuck Palumbo, Umaga. And then he got drafted to ECW.
Where years ago to die.
A month later, he lost the U.S. title to Shelton Benjamin after making the U.S. title exclusive to ECW. Then he became the number one contender for Mark Henry's ECW title. Let me say that sentence again. Matt Hardy became the number one contender for Mark Henry's ECW title.
When I think of the ECW championship, I think of Matt Hardy and Mark Henry.
The funniest part is the men he beat for it was Morrison, Miz, and Finlay.
Again, ECW pillars.
You want to know something shocking? Matt Hardy won the ECW title. Granted, it was a championship scramble match. And this was in 2008. This was Matt Hardy's first heavyweight championship win. The ECW title.
I remember that because I remember that picture with Jeff and Matt. Jeff has the WWE championship and he has that ugly ass.
Whoa! Let's not talk about that.
Okay.
Let's not talk about the fact that whenever Matt would win, say like the European title, Jeff would win the Intercontinental, or when Matt would win the ECW, Jeff would win the WWE. Or when Matt would win the U.S., Jeff would be vying for the Intercontinental, which at the time was much more respected. But let's not talk about that. Let's talk about that. Matt would lose the title to Jack Swagger.
And hold on, if I go back further, when I remember reading a story when Matt and Lita first started dating, I read Vince wanted to make Jeff and Lita be the on-screen couple. Do you remember hearing about that?
Yep.
So yeah. So Matt's not allowed to have anything to himself.
Because people always thought Jeff had more charisma.
He's a charismatic enigma. Lord.
Yeah. He lost the title to Swagger. It was at that same pay-per-view that Matt turned on his brother Jeff again. Curious enough, he cost Jeff a match against Edge, the WWE Championship. And then, all of a sudden, he just re-signed with SmackDown. This is when, Matt went super heel. He said that he ruined Jeff's pyrotechnics. He caused the automobile accident. He burned down Jeff Hardy's house and
killed his dog.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. And then he brought out the collar. Then, Matt Hardy won the Extreme Rules match at WrestleMania 25. And he won the stretcher match on the following edition of SmackDown. Can you believe it?
I can't. This seems like a win-win for our boy Matt here.
And then he was drafted to Raw, so he's back on the main show. And then he lost to Jeff Hardy in an I Quit match at Backlash.
Just when all of his momentum.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, his next feud after Jeff, or his next gimmick, his next whatever you want to call it, he wrestled with a hand cast.
That's fine.
That was his persona. He claiming he was wrestling under protest.
I like that, actually.
And then he formed a tag team with William Regal. They acted as henchmen for Vicky Guerrero. I don't remember this, but Matt got injured again and was traded back to SmackDown. And then he helped Jeff Hardy beat CM Punk for the title. And then he saved Jeff from CM Punk and the Hart Dynasty. In the Hart Dynasty. Then he apologized for his past actions and that he was not behind any of Jeff's accidents. And he teamed with Jeff Hardy and John Morrison. So just like that, Hardy's back together. Like I said, no harm, no foul. You know, killed your dog, or did I? You know, kind of floundered again, as Matt does. And then he began an on-screen relationship with Maria. But then she was released. And Hardy was then the next big thing to happen. He's suspended by Vince. He attacked Drew McIntyre, you know, the chosen one. He was really McIntyre's first big opponent.
Yeah.
And then it was confirmed that Matt Hardy was sent home from a European tour. And then he started putting those YouTube videos up about his disinterest in WWE and how he wanted to leave the company. And this really began a downward emotional spiral for him. But no need to fear. TNA is here. He immediately came in for the Immortal stable, which we've talked about on here before. Was the heel. It was Ric Flair, Hogan, that whole group. He was the surprise opponent for Rob Van Dam, which would have been cool. Except you could tell Matt was in a bad place, clearly by just when he came out. He wasn't in the best of shape. He just didn't look like he wanted to be there. He was cold-blooded Matt Hardy, because he was, bad guy. Coolest part of him being there is he was feuding with Beer Money, and his tag team partner that he picked was actually Chris Harris, who was James Storm's old AMW tag team partner. They lost. And then in June of that year, which would have been 2011, so less than about 6 months of being at the company, he was suspended. And then in August, he was released following a DUI arrest.
Nice.
He would show up in the indies, nothing really big. Definitely his career was floundering. Then showed up in Ring of Honor to do one of my favorite things. He challenged Adam Cole for the Ring of Honor television title. And then he joined the Scum stable. Scum stands for Suffering, Chaos, Ugliness, and Mayhem. And it was Kevin Steen, Steve Corino, and Jimmy Jacobs that founded it. By the time Matt Hardy got there, Cliff Compton was in it, Jimmy Rave was in it, Rhett Titus was in it. It was a hefty little group.
Literally.
Yeah, I mean, on top of that, Hardy beat Kevin Steen in a no DQ match, and he became the #1 contender for the Ring of Honor title. He was defeated by Jay Briscoe, and later that same day, Scum would have to disband because they lost a match. Hardy then started aiding Adam Cole in retaining his title, and he formed a tag team with them. And then Hardy opted out of his Ring of Honor contract and went back to TNA. So this time, he took away his momentum. But do you want to guess why he went back to TNA?
Probably.
That's right, a Hardy's reunion.
I was gonna say that. I'm pretty sure Jeff was there at that time.
Yep. They had matches with Team 3D and the American Wolves, who the Wolves pretty much substituted for Edge and Christian. These were great matches. These got me back into TNA. Usually I would kind of just skim the results, but when I saw that these three were fighting, I was intrigued, especially since Hardy coming out of the Indies. They feuded for the tag titles, and then the Hardys entered a tournament for the tag team championships. Then, let's see, they defeated the Wolves, but then they were defeated by a team called Revolution. And then finally, the Hardys won an Ultimate X match for the tag team titles. If you're not sure what an Ultimate X match is, that's where they have the ropes above the ring in the shape of an X.
Yeah.
And then you have to, at the one where you put the belts up there? I think so. You have to put the belt up there yourself. So instead of bringing the belt down, you have to put it up yourself. As things go, Hardy had to vacate the titles because Jeff got hurt. This began probably the best era in Matt Hardy's career. He started a singles run in TNA. He tried what he could to win the title until eventually he became one of my favorite gimmicks, which was Big Money Matt. It was heel Matt Hardy. Came out in the suit. He feuded with EC3 a lot at this time. I feuded with Drew McIntyre when he came into the promotion. He even had to feud with Kurt Angle. Matt Hardy was a World Heavyweight Champion in TNA. I count this one as his first World Heavyweight title. I don't count. No.
Okay.
And now we're getting to the part that everyone wants me to speak about.
Hold on, before we get the Big Money Matt, wasn't that the time where he was uploading those like hilarious YouTube videos?
Yes.
Okay. I remember those.
Matt's always been good at YouTube. He's always been good at social media. He was one of the first wrestlers on Twitter. He's always been ahead of the curve. That's why I said at the beginning, I mean, he's everything that you'd want in like a main event guy. Especially with this constant evolving. Speaking of evolving, he started becoming broken. This is where he started blaming Jeff Hardy for everything. I mean, I think he should, but you know,
obviously,
he says that Jeff broke him, and he became obsessed with deleting him. You know, there was so much with this. This gave TNA a big boom. I mean, Delete or Decay, the Ultimate Deletion, the Hardys reformed again. But unfortunately, after Matt and Jeff left TNA, Matt's wife Rebby, we haven't spoke on a lot here, but she's heavily involved in Matt's life once they got together. She went on a social media tirade and slammed TNA and the new management, which was Anthem Sports. They issued a cease and desist letter to the Hardys' new promotion, which was Ring of Honor. And they wanted the broken gimmick to stay in TNA. They credit the creation of the broken gimmick to Jeremy Borash, who is now in WWE, and Billy Corgan, who is the NWA president. Clearly, Matt and his family had a lot of input in this. I mean, his wife did a lot for it. Hell, his father-in-law played the gardener. Matt acquired all ownership in January of 2018, which he got Broken Matt, Broken Nero, Broken Billions, and Vanguard 1. Now, I'll say, as big as this was, and you know, it made me laugh a couple times. One of my favorites is they had something called the Tag Team Deletion, which is where they had a bunch of tag teams show up to the Hardy compound, which is the area that they own. And one of the teams to show up was the Rock and Roll Express. And when Matt Hardy opened the door, you know, oh, Ricky, it's so good to see you. And Ricky Morton stopped him and asked him if he had a beer. And then Matt Hardy and the Broken Gimmick said they did not have a beer, but they had green beans. I don't know why, but that stuck out to me. And when I saw that, I about lost it. I mean, this Broken Gimmick, the other funny thing that it did is how everyone, it constantly evolves, constantly is reincarnated. So at one point, Matt Hardy fought a kangaroo, which I'm pretty sure had the spirit of George Washington in it.
I'll have to fact check that one.
I mean, I was how do I want to word this? It entertained me, but I think if this would have been done in a promotion not TNA, it probably wouldn't have done as well, which we'll clearly find out in a later bit.
Oh, he had Jeff fight a kangaroo.
Oh, yeah.
To teach him to be a fighter, not a spot monkey.
Yes.
That's awesome.
They returned to Ring of Honor again, where they challenged the Young Bucks. They won the Ring of Honor titles. Pretty big. This time, they didn't lose their momentum, as they showed up at WrestleMania. They had one of the biggest pops of all time. They won the ladder match. This was the same night they lost the Ring of Honor titles. Then, of course, Hardy lost the titles to Cesaro and Sheamus, and just as things were getting picked up, Jeff got injured. And Matt Hardy began wrestling singles matches. But, during a feud with Bray Wyatt, his woken, not broken gimmick would debut. They had a match at the Lake of Reincarnation.
I remember that.
Which they dubbed the Ultimate Deletion. I mean, it was fun. It definitely had a lot better production. And the Hardy Wyatt team was great. They both needed it at the time. Both the characters were just silly enough to work. Matt Hardy actually won the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. One of the Andre Battle Royals people kind of forget about.
I always do.
They were the Deleter of Worlds. They won a tournament for the vacant Raw Tag Team titles. But what I think is the biggest fucking derailment, they lost the titles to the B Team. How do you go from being one of the company's hottest teams to losing to the B Team?
That was Dallas and Curtis Axel,
Yeah.
right?
Yep, and I know they're picking up steam. I know the B Team, everyone loved them, but this is where I think that sometimes the internet ruins wrestling.
Really?
Because there's no reason Curtis Axel and Bo Dallas should have been tag team champions. Never. Not as a social outcast. Not as Mrs. Security. And not as the B Team. I guess, according to Matt Hardy, the reason that WWE disbanded the team was because he and Wyatt pitched several ideas to WWE to work with their characters. Now, if what we've heard about Bray Wyatt is true, about being a dickhead backstage, I'd kind of believe this. This is also around the time where Hardy was taking time off because his back was fusing with his pelvis.
Normal.
You know, as one does.
Yeah, that's usually does. Yeah, if you guys are listening, make sure to go get your pelvis removed from your spine real quick.
Yeah.
Go schedule that appointment real quick.
Matt Hardy returned to SmackDown to team with Jeff. Then they would win the tag titles, the SmackDown Tag Championships. They beat the Usos. 20-day reign. And had to vacate it because Jeff was hurt.
Again.
Yeah, again, anytime. And I don't want to act like Jeff Hardy purposely got injured.
Obviously
But I
not,
mean...
no, but it's just... It's just
how many times
sad.
can Matt be handed the ball?
And he's ready to go.
Yeah.
And this isn't the last time this happened. This is what, in 2019?
Yep.
It happened again. Kind of.
I mean, the last big thing Matt did of note was when he confronted Randy Orton, and we were supposed to get like a street fight or something. But then, yeah, he was gone from WWE. He said that he had more creative input to give, and he wanted to be more than just a producer. Then, in what I think was one of the bigger
wasn't this around the time where that joke was happening, that everybody that Randy Orton attacked like ended up in AEW?
Yes.
Like a couple weeks later.
Matt was one of the first ones.
So it was Matt, Big Show, and Christian, wasn't it?
And Mark Henry.
Yeah, they all got like punted by Randy Orton.
In one of the bigger moments for COVID, and I think early AEW, Matt Hardy came back to Dynamite, and he was his broken gimmick. He was the replacement for Nick Jackson at Blood and Guts, but that was postponed to the COVID-19 pandemic, of course. I think his debut would have been a lot bigger if there would have been a crowd there, but I also don't know how the hologram would have worked with a crowd. So, I mean, there's pros and cons to it.
Yeah.
Then, during the period with either no live audience or a lack of live audience, he felt that the broken character was needed needed fans. So then he started to have all his gimmicks appear. Big Money Matt Hardy version 1, Unkillable Matt Hardy, which was the one that feuded with Edge. And it turns out that Tony Khan wasn't a fan of the broken gimmick, and he preferred realistic wrestling. So the broken gimmick kind of went to the wayside. I liked having all the different Matt Hardys come out. I kind of wished it would have been a Mick Foley situation where when he needed a little bit of edge, he'd bring out the broken gimmick. Or when he needed, do you get what I'm saying? Like, depending on the situation.
Yeah, Lita needed a little bit of edge too. So
Yeah.
it's only fair for Matt to also need a little bit of them too. He can just call Adam up. But yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah.
Then he got to team with the Elite to defeat the Inner Circle in the first Stadium Stampede match. Then after this is when Hardy feuded with Sammy Guevara, and Hardy defeated him in a Broken Rules match at All Out. But he took probably one of the nastiest bumps to date.
Yeah, then he just splattered it on the concrete, right, with his head.
Oh yeah. I mean, then he finished his feud with Sammy. And then that kind of derailed a lot of things. I mean, between Tony not liking the broken Matt gimmick and then the injury. He then started the Hardy Family Office, which was one of those stables that AEW did not need. I mean, Private Party was there. Hybrid 2. Eventually Butcher and Blade and Andrade joined. I don't really think there was anything special here. Well, he was kicked out of his own group, and it became the Andrade Hardy Family Office, but he was kicked out, and he was later saved by Darby, Sting, and then Jeff Hardy, who danced on his way down to the ring.
Yeah.
The Hardys got a pretty big push, and it looked like they were scheduled to face the Young Bucks in a feud at one point. It seems what was supposed to happen was the Hardys were going to win the tag titles, and then drop them to the Young Bucks probably about a month later.
Something like that. Yeah.
And then Jeff's DUI happened.
Thanks,
And
Jeff.
now Matt is kind of, I wouldn't say floundering, but he's certainly lost in the shuffle at AEW. And that is where the Matt Hardy story gets us today.
When's the last time Matt has been on AEW? Like, has he been on since Jeff?
I'll be honest, I don't know.
I'm looking up his cage match profile right now. Hold on.
It's funny because if you do Matt Hardy AEW, the top people also ask is Matt Hardy in AEW?
He wrestled in the Golden Ticket Battle Royal in September at Arthur Ashe at Grand Slam.
Okay.
Okay, so he was there. Let me see. When did the DIY happen? June?
Yeah.
Okay. He wrestled at the Kia Forum Los Angeles show with Darby, Christian Cage, and Jurassic Express versus the Elite and some Japanese guy.
Oh. I mean, he just hasn't. It seemed like he was going to be one of the bigger acquisitions and make a big jump. And, I mean, just like Big Show, kind of like Christian, he had a moment, but now there's nothing. Just like every other thing in his career. Like I said, he almost gets to the top of the hill. It just falls right back down.
I like Matt. He was he's very nice to us.
Yeah, he's a great guy, and like I said, I think his promo work's good. His social media stuff's good. His wrestling's good. I don't know why he can't reach that point. I don't know if it's promoters. I don't know if it's Jeff. I don't know what it is. But it's truly a cruel twist of fate.